I used to believe that love could survive anything. That when you marry someone who looks at you like you're the only person in the world, that kind of love never fades. But I was wrong. Because sometimes love doesn't fade. It betrays you. My name is Annika, and 10 years ago, my entire world collapsed in a single night. But before that night, everything looked perfect. Armin and I met in college. He was charming, funny, and a little too confident for his own good. I was the quiet one, always the girl with books in her hands, always the listener. But Armin noticed me. He always said, "You're the kind of calm I didn't know I needed." We got married 2 years later, in a small ceremony at my grandmother's house. Everyone said we were meant to be. We built our first home together, a cozy little apartment with cream walls and cheap furniture that we painted ourselves. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. When our daughter Mili was born, I thought our lives had found their purpose. She had his eyes and my smile. The way Armin looked at her, it melted me every single time. He'd hold her like she was the most fragile thing in the world, whispering promises about the future. Everything seemed perfect, almost too perfect. That's when Rini, my cousin's sister, came into the picture. Rini was my mother's younger sister's daughter. We grew up together, more like sisters than cousins. She was bright, beautiful, and loud. She had this way of making everyone laugh. When her parents died in a car accident, she stayed with us for a few months before moving away for college. When she came back into my life, I was already married and had Mili. She said she wanted to stay in the city for work. I didn't even hesitate. I invited her to stay with us for a while. After all, she was family. Armin was happy too. "Of course," he said. "It'll be fun having her around." The house has been too quiet since Mili started sleeping through the night. I remember laughing at that. I remember trusting both of them. At first, everything felt normal. Rini helped me with chores, played with Mili, even cooked sometimes. She had this infectious energy that filled the house with laughter again. But slowly, little things began to bother me. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and found Armin and Rini laughing at something on his phone. When they saw me, they went quiet. Rini brushed it off. "Oh, we were just watching something funny." I smiled, though I felt something twist inside me. Then there were small things. Rini started dressing up more at home. Lipstick even when she wasn't going out. Armin started staying up late, saying he was working on the laptop. Sometimes, when I came out of Mili's room after putting her to bed, they'd be sitting too close on the couch, whispering. I told myself it was nothing, that it was just my insecurity talking, because Rini was family, and Armin was my husband. They couldn't possibly. No, they wouldn't. But still, I couldn't shake the unease. Then came the incident that cracked my illusion. One afternoon, I came home early from the boutique where I worked part-time. The door was unlocked. Inside, the living room was quiet, but I heard whispers from the kitchen. I froze near the doorway. It was Rini's voice. She was saying softly, "What if she finds out?" And then Armin's voice, lower, rougher. "She won't. I'll handle it. We just have to be careful until..." I didn't hear the rest. I backed away silently, my heart racing so hard it hurt. Until that moment, I'd convinced myself I was imagining things. But that conversation shattered the illusion. When they heard me open the main door again, they came out smiling, pretending everything was fine. Armin kissed my forehead, asked how my day was. Rini offered to make tea. I stood there, smiling back at them, pretending to be normal. But inside, something had broken. That night, I couldn't sleep. Armin was next to me, breathing evenly. I stared at the ceiling, tears silently slipping down my temples. In my mind, I kept hearing Rini's voice. What if she finds out? And Armin's, she won't. The next few days were torture. Every moment felt like a lie. Every smile, every touch, every word, they all felt staged. Still, I said nothing. I wanted proof. I needed to be sure, so I started watching them. Every glance, every excuse, every phone call. And slowly, my fear became certainty. Armin started coming home late. Rini started buying new dresses, saying they were on sale. One day, I saw her phone light up with a message while she was in the shower. It was from a contact saved as A. The message said, "I miss you already." I stared at it for a long time before putting the phone down. When Rini came out, I smiled at her and asked if she wanted tea. She smiled back, like nothing had changed. But I knew now. I knew everything. That evening, I sat on the balcony, watching the sunset. Mili played beside me, her tiny hands holding her favorite doll. And as the sky turned orange and pink, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happens next, I will never let this child suffer because of their betrayal. I will protect her, even if I have to break silently, because I didn't know it then. But one day, my daughter would grow up to protect me, and when she did, she would make them pay for everything they did. I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. The air was heavy, the kind that smells like a storm is coming. The curtains swayed softly in the wind, and the clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. Each second felt like it was mocking me. Armin hadn't come home yet. It was already 10:45 p.m. He used to call me if he was running late. But that night, nothing. His phone went straight to voicemail, and my messages were all marked delivered, but unread. I kept pacing from the window to the couch, my heart pounding faster with every passing minute. Mili, barely 1.5 years old, was asleep in her crib. Her little face was peaceful, unaware that the world around her was about to fall apart. I tried to convince myself it was just traffic, or maybe a late meeting. But deep down I knew. I just didn't want to believe it yet. At 11:30, I called Rini. Her phone was switched off. That's when my hands started shaking. I walked to her room, the one she'd been staying in since she moved in with us. The door was slightly open. Inside, the bed was neatly made. The wardrobe was half empty, and on the nightstand was a single gold earring, the one I gifted her last Diwali. I remember standing there, staring at that earring, trying to breathe. The truth hit me like a wave I couldn't escape. I checked the closet in my own bedroom next. 2 of Arman's shirts, the ones he wore most, were gone. His suitcase too. My world tilted. I stumbled to the dining table and sat down, clutching the edge of it like it could hold me together. That's when I saw it, a folded piece of paper under his watch. It was a note. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. "Annika, I'm sorry. I can't live a lie anymore. I never meant to hurt you, but my heart belongs somewhere else now. Please don't hate me. Take care of Mili." That's all it said. No explanation. No goodbye. Just sorry. The word felt like poison in my mouth. I don't remember how long I sat there. At some point, the rain started pouring outside, loud and merciless, and something inside me broke, quietly and completely. I pressed the note against my chest, crying so hard I couldn't even breathe. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep, it feels like your soul is tearing apart. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hate them. But all I could think about was Mili, sleeping peacefully, dreaming of a world that had just been destroyed. I went to her room, sat by her crib, and held her tiny hand in mine. Her fingers curled around mine instinctively, like she was comforting me. That's when I whispered through my tears, "I'm here, my love. I'm not going anywhere." Because even if he walked away, I couldn't. The next morning, the world kept moving, as if nothing had happened. The sun rose, the birds sang, the neighbors chatted about groceries, and I was just trying to remember how to breathe. I called his office. They said he'd resigned 2 days earlier. He'd planned this, carefully, cruelly. When my parents came over and found out, they were furious. My mother kept saying, "Rini, that girl, how could she do this to you?" My father stayed quiet, just sat there with his hands clasped, staring at the floor. There were whispers in the neighborhood, pity in people's eyes when I stepped outside. Some even said, maybe she wasn't a good wife. I learned quickly that people don't comfort broken women. They judge them. So I stopped explaining. I stopped defending myself. I just survived. The first few months were the hardest. Bills piled up. Mili got sick often. I barely slept. Juggling part-time work, late nights, and a heart that wouldn't stop aching. But every morning, when I looked at her, that little face with her father's eyes, I told myself, you can cry later. Right now, she needs you. I started stitching clothes for neighbors to earn extra money. Slowly, 1 customer became 5, and 5 became 10. It wasn't much, but it kept food on the table and a roof over our heads. Every night after putting Mili to sleep, I'd look at the empty side of the bed and feel a void so deep, it hurt to even lie down. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of dawn, I'd whisper to the darkness, why her, Rini? Why you? Because that betrayal, coming from my cousin, my sister, in all but name, cut deeper than Armin's departure ever could. 2 years later, I heard from someone that Armin and Rini got married. They'd moved to another city. He'd started a small business with her. When I heard that, something inside me went cold. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't even feel anger. It was like my emotions had frozen. I remember looking at Mili, who was playing with her crayons, and thinking, maybe it's better this way. He made his choice. I'll make mine. So I built my life around her. Her laughter, her schoolwork, her little dreams. Every time she called me the best mama in the world, it healed a part of me I thought was gone forever. But deep down, I always wondered if he ever thought about us. If Rini ever felt guilty. If their perfect little world ever cracked the way mine did that night. I didn't know it then, but fate was already working in silence. Life has a strange way of coming full circle, of returning pain to where it came from, and the wheel of karma was already turning, because 10 years later, the same man who walked out that rainy night would stand before me again. Only this time, the power would be mine, or rather, my daughter's. I used to think heartbreak was loud, the kind of pain that makes you scream and throw things until the world notices. But I learned that the real kind of heartbreak is quiet. It's the silence that settles after everyone else stops talking about it. It's the mornings when you still set 2 cups of tea, out of habit, before remembering. There's no one left to drink the second one. After Armin and Rini left, life became a blur of survival. Every day was the same. Wake up, feed Mili, drop her at the small daycare center. Then rush to my tailoring work at the local boutique. At night, when Mili slept beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and whisper promises into the dark that I would make a better life for her, even if I had to do it all alone. But it wasn't easy. Money was tight. The bills always seemed to come faster than my pay. And then there was the judgment, the endless whispers from neighbors, the pitying looks, the cruel comments masked as sympathy. She looks so young to be a single mother. Her husband left her for her cousin, you know. What kind of woman lets that happen? I heard them all, every word, every sideways glance. But I learned to keep my head high, because I realized something. When you're broken, people either watch you fall or wait to see if you'll stand back up. I decided to stand. One evening, after another long day at the boutique, I came home exhausted. Mili, barely 3, was sitting on the floor, coloring with her little box of broken crayons. When she saw me, she jumped up and said, "Mama, I made you a flower." She held up a piece of paper covered in scribbles of pink and green. It was messy, but to me, it was perfect. That night, I pinned that paper on the wall beside our bed. It stayed there for years, a reminder of why I kept going. There were nights when I broke down silently in the kitchen. Sometimes I'd see an old photograph. The three of us, smiling in some forgotten happiness. And it felt like someone punched the air out of me. But I'd wipe my tears before Mili could see them. I never wanted her to grow up with bitterness. Whenever she asked about her father, I said softly, "He had to go away." She'd nod, accept it, and move on to her dolls. Children are merciful like that. They don't need revenge. They just need love. But even though I forgave in words, the wound never really healed. It just settled somewhere deep, quiet but sharp. Years passed. I saved little by little, taking more orders for dresses and blouses, working late into the night while Mili slept beside the sewing machine. Sometimes she'd wake up and say, "Mama, don't work so much. Sleep." And I'd smile and say, "Someday soon we'll have a better house, baby. Then I'll rest." She'd nod, half asleep, whispering, "Promise." And I'd promise, even though I didn't know how. When Mili turned 6, I moved us into a slightly better apartment. It was small, but it had sunshine. I painted the walls yellow because she said it looked like happy. We bought a small second-hand dining table and celebrated with noodles and mango juice. That night, when she hugged me and said, "Mama, our home is beautiful," I realized something. Happiness wasn't something I'd lost. It was something I could rebuild. One brick, one smile, one promise at a time. People often said I was too calm for someone who'd been betrayed. They didn't understand that I'd stopped wasting energy on anger. Anger doesn't feed your child. Anger doesn't pay rent. Anger doesn't make you stronger. Love does. And all my love was for Mili. She was growing fast, smart, curious, with a spark that reminded me of who I used to be before life hardened me. She'd ask questions about everything, from stars to sewing needles, and sometimes even about her father. "Do you think he misses us?" she asked one night, her small voice breaking the silence. I hesitated. "I don't know, Mili," I said gently. "But we're doing just fine, aren't we?" She smiled and nodded. "Yes, Mama, we're strong." And that was enough for me. Years went by like that. Quiet, steady survival, turning into a rhythm I could live with. I learned to laugh again, even if it was softer than before. I started cooking new recipes, sewing clothes for local schools, and even managed to buy a second-hand scooter for deliveries. Bit by bit, the pieces of my shattered life began to form something whole again. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I'd barely recognize myself, not because I looked older, but because I looked peaceful. The kind of peace that comes after you've walked through fire and survived. One evening, I got a call from my mother. She mentioned that Rini and Armin had a child, a son. They'd moved back to our city. My heart froze for a moment. I hadn't heard their names in years. "They're doing well," my mother said hesitantly. "He runs a small business now, but you don't need to worry about them, Annika." I said I wasn't worried. And maybe I wasn't, because something inside me had changed. I didn't want revenge anymore. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted peace. But destiny, it never forgets unfinished stories. And sometimes, it waits for the right person to close the chapter for you. That person was already growing under my roof. Quietly, watching, learning, my daughter Mili. She had no idea what life had taken from me, but she would be the one to make it right. She just didn't know it yet. 10 years is a long time. Long enough for pain to fade into memory. Long enough for wounds to stop bleeding and become quiet scars that only ache on rainy nights. Mili turned 15 that summer. She wasn't my little girl anymore. She had grown into a young woman, sharp, confident, and beautiful in the way that frightened me sometimes. She had our man's eyes, but none of his weakness. There was something fierce in her gaze, something unbreakable. My small tailoring shop had turned into a modest boutique by then. The sign above the door read, Mili's Threads. It was her idea. When I asked her why she wanted her name there, she said, "Because you made this shop for me. Mama, you've already given enough of your name to others." I laughed, but her words stayed with me. She didn't know how much truth she'd spoken. Our lives had become peaceful, simple, predictable. Morning tea on the balcony, rush to school and shop, quiet dinners, occasional laughter about my outdated phone or her teenage slang. We didn't have everything, but we had us. Sometimes I'd look at her across the dinner table and think, this was my redemption. All those nights I cried alone. Every moment I'd begged the universe to help me survive. It had all led me to this. Then, one day, the past came knocking, literally. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was pinning a sari on a mannequin in the shop when the bell rang. A woman stepped in, well-dressed, expensive perfume, and a familiar tilt of the head that froze me in place. Rini. My cousin? My betrayer. She looked older. The years had softened her beauty, but her confidence hadn't changed. She smiled like we'd just spoken yesterday. "Annika," she said, almost cautiously. "Oh my God, it's really you." I forced a smile. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Rini, it's been a long time." She nodded, glancing around the boutique. "You did all this yourself? It's lovely." Her words were sweet, but her eyes. Those eyes still carried that same pitying shine, the same superiority hidden behind compliments. I didn't ask her about Armin. I didn't need to, because behind her perfect lipstick and polite tone, I could already see something cracked, a restlessness, a flicker of tension she was trying to hide. Then she said it. "We live nearby now. Armin's business brought us back to town. You should come visit sometime. I'd love for you to meet our son." Our son. 2 words that stabbed. Even after all these years, I simply said, "That's nice." Before she left, she added quietly, "Mili must be a teenager now, right? She's lucky to have you." Something about the way she said it felt rehearsed, almost guilty. When she walked out, I just stood there, hands trembling slightly. I hadn't thought about them in years. I'd made peace, or at least I thought I had. But seeing her face again was like reopening an old scar, and the universe, it seemed, wasn't done twisting the knife. That evening, when I came home, Mili was sitting at the dining table doing homework. I tried to act normal, but she noticed something right away. She always did. "Mama, what's wrong?" I hesitated. "Nothing, sweetheart, just saw an old friend today." She smiled. "You're terrible at lying." "Who was it?" I sighed. "Your father's cousin, Rini." Her hand froze on the paper. Her eyes lifted slowly to mine. "The woman who left with him?" I nodded silently. She leaned back in her chair, the calmest I'd ever seen her. "So, she's back." I stared at her, surprised. There was no anger in her tone, just quiet calculation. "Yes," I said softly, "but it doesn't matter. We've moved on." She nodded, but the faintest smile touched her lips. "Of course, Mama, it doesn't matter." But I knew that look. It was the same one I'd seen in the mirror years ago when I first decided to survive. Only hers was stronger, sharper. A week later, we ran into them again, by complete accident. It was a school event, and Mili's project had been selected for a city-level exhibition. Parents were invited. As we entered the hall, I spotted him before he saw me. Armin, my husband. He stood near the entrance, wearing the same brand of arrogance he always had. Though the years had added lines to his face, his hair had thinned, and the confident sparkle in his eyes was dimmer. But I would have known him anywhere. Rini stood beside him, smiling too brightly, their son tugging at her sleeve. When his eyes met mine, he froze, the color drained from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the crowd faded around us. And then, Mili stepped forward, polite and poised, offering a faint smile. "Hello, sir." Armin blinked, caught off guard. I'm sorry, do I know you?" She smiled again, her voice calm. "Not really, but I know who you are." He didn't know how to respond. Rini quickly jumped in, her tone overly cheerful. "Mili, you've grown up so beautifully. You probably don't even remember us." Mili tilted her head. "Oh, I remember everything, Auntie." Something in her voice made Rini flinch. I stepped in then, cutting the tension. "We should go. Mili's project is starting soon." We walked away, but I could feel their eyes burning into our backs. That night, over dinner, Mili was quiet. Too quiet. Finally she said, "Mama, I don't understand something. How could you ever forgive them?" I set down my spoon. "Because I had to." "For us," she frowned. "If it were me, I wouldn't forgive. I'd make them regret every breath." Her words chilled me. Not because they were harsh, but because they carried conviction. "Mili," I said softly, "revenge doesn't heal pain." She looked at me then, her expression unreadable. "Maybe not, but sometimes it teaches people what pain feels like." I didn't respond. I just watched her as she stood, collected her dishes, and went to her room. For the first time, I saw something in my daughter I hadn't before. Something dangerous. Not hatred, not cruelty, purpose. That night, long after she'd gone to bed, I stood on the balcony and stared at the city lights. I thought about Rini's carefully painted smile, about Armin's guilt-stricken silence, about Mili's calm, controlled words. Life had brought us all back to the same place, as if to finish a story that had never really ended. I just didn't know who was going to write the final chapter. But fate did, and it had chosen my daughter's hand to hold the pen. It started with curiosity, at least that's what Mili called it. But I think it was something deeper, that quiet burning need to understand why a man would leave his wife and child, why blood could betray blood, and why people who destroy others still manage to live comfortably, as if karma had forgotten them. One Sunday morning, I found her sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her laptop with a strange intensity. Her face was calm, but her fingers were trembling slightly as she clicked through pages. "Mili," I asked. "Homework?" She looked up quickly, almost too quickly. "Yeah, something like that." I didn't think much of it then. She was always doing some project, always curious about the world. But that evening, when I went to her room to collect her laundry, I noticed her desk. A small notebook lay open, and on it, written neatly in her tidy handwriting, were two names, Armin Rahman and Rini Chowdhury. Underneath there were addresses, business names, phone numbers, notes, and at the bottom of the page, 3 words that made my heart stop. "He owes us." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself she was just curious, maybe angry, but harmlessly so. But deep down, I knew something had shifted inside her, the kind of shift you don't undo. A few days later, I came home early from the shop. Mili wasn't there, but her school bag was on the chair. I called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Around 6, she came back, calm, smiling, her hair tied up neatly, like she'd just come from school. "Where were you?" I asked. She shrugged. "Library." I had to look something up, but something was different. Her eyes were brighter, her smile sharper, like someone who had just figured out the missing piece of a puzzle. That weekend, she told me she wanted to go to a business fair at the convention center. Some youth entrepreneur event. I said no at first. It was across town, and I worried about her safety, but she smiled that patient smile of hers. "Mama, I'll be fine. I just want to see how people run small businesses. It might help with our boutique." I gave in. I didn't realize until much later that Airman's company was one of the sponsors of that event. She told me what happened there weeks later. In pieces, Like someone unwrapping a wound carefully, she saw him again, but this time, not as a scared child, watching her father walk away. This time, she saw him for what he had become, a man hiding behind a cracked smile, talking big, laughing too loudly, while his company's finances quietly rotted beneath the surface. She overheard snippets of conversation between Ammon and his business partner about investor troubles, pending payments, legal notices. She watched Rini too, graceful as ever, but with tension etched around her mouth. They were no longer the picture-perfect couple who had walked out of our lives 10 years ago. They were crumbling, silently, secretly, and Mili, my daughter, saw the cracks. A week after that event, she came to me while I was folding laundry. "Mama," she said softly, "if someone hurt you and never said sorry, would you still forgive them?" I sighed, not looking up. "Forgiveness isn't for them, sweetheart. It's for you. To move on." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "But what if they never learned their lesson? What if they just kept hurting people, thinking they could get away with it?" I looked at her then. "Then karma will handle it." Her lips curved slightly. "Maybe karma just needs a little help." That night, I sat by her door, listening. I could hear her typing, whispering softly to herself, pacing, scribbling on paper. Something was happening. A storm was brewing in the quiet of that room. The following week, strange things began to happen. Rini came by the shop again, unannounced, but this time, she didn't look composed. Her eyes were puffy, her hair slightly unkempt. She seemed anxious. "Annika," she said in a shaky voice, Did you tell anyone about Armin's company?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She swallowed hard. "Someone leaked confidential information. Our investors pulled out. It's chaos. Arman is furious. He thinks someone is trying to destroy him." I stared at her, speechless. "Rini, I don't even know what business he runs." She nodded quickly, almost desperate to believe me. I know you wouldn't. It's just, everything's falling apart." Her voice cracked then. "He's been drinking again, yelling. The house feels like hell." I didn't say a word, but in my heart, I felt something stir. Not joy, not satisfaction, just a cold, quiet realization. Karma wasn't slow this time. It had a face. It had a name. It was my daughter. That night, I waited until she finished her homework, then said, "Mili, did you do something?" She looked up from her notebook, eyes steady. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," she sighed, closed her book, and met my gaze. "Mama, I didn't do anything illegal. I just showed people the truth." "What truth?" "That he's a fraud. That he's been using false numbers to get investments. That he cheated people, just like he cheated us." My chest tightened. "Mili," she stood, voice calm, almost eerily so. "I found his company's public reports. Anyone could access them. I just sent the inconsistencies to someone who cared, a journalist." My heart raced. "You shouldn't have done that," she smiled faintly. "He shouldn't have done what he did either. But he did, and it's time someone held him accountable." I wanted to scold her. I wanted to tell her that revenge poisons the soul. But when I looked at her, standing there, strong and unshaken, I saw something else. She wasn't vengeful. She was determined. She wasn't trying to destroy him for sport. She was restoring balance. The same way the world had taken everything from us, she was now quietly taking back what was owed. That night, as she slept peacefully, I whispered a prayer. Not for Armin, not for Rini, but for my daughter, because I knew this was only the beginning. The past had finally caught up, and this time, my daughter wasn't the victim. She was the reckoning. Within weeks, the whispers began. Armin's company, once praised as a fast-growing success story, was suddenly all over the local news. For the wrong reasons, headlines splashed across social media. Aman Rahman investigated for financial misconduct. Investment firm accused of falsifying documents. The same man who used to walk through life with polished shoes and a smug grin now couldn't even hold his head up. I didn't have to ask how it happened. I already knew. My daughter's silence said it all. Every evening when she came home, she'd ask casually, "Mama, did you see the news today?" I'd say yes, and she'd just nod, quietly satisfied, before going to her room. No arrogance, no cruel laughter, just calm purpose. The way storms sound before they break something open. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Armin. He stood outside my boutique, his once expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. 10 years of anger, humiliation, heartbreak, all standing in front of me in human form. "Annika," he said, his voice trembling. "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. He looked around the boutique slowly, taking in the walls, the sewing machines, the customers' laughter in the background. "So this is what you've built," he murmured. "You've done well for yourself." I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Armin?" He exhaled shakily. "You saw the news, right? Someone's trying to destroy me." "Destroy you?" I repeated softly. "Or expose you." His jaw tightened. "You think I deserved this?" I stared at him. The man who'd walked away when I needed him most. The man who'd watched me cry and chosen to forget. "I think," I said slowly, "that life has a strange way of teaching lessons we refuse to learn." He flinched, his eyes darting away. "Annika, I made mistakes, but you have to believe me. I didn't mean to hurt you or Mili." I almost laughed. "You meant to love someone else while I cried alone. You meant to build a new family while leaving ours behind. You meant every choice you made." He looked at me helplessly. "You think I'm not paying for it now? My company's collapsing. Rini can't stand to look at me. My son barely talks to me. Everything's falling apart." I said nothing. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "If this is your doing, if you told anyone about my business, please stop. I can't take any more." I looked him straight in the eye. "I didn't do anything, Armin. You built your own destruction, brick by brick." He searched my face for truth, and must have found it, because his shoulders sagged, his eyes filled with a grief that was almost pathetic. When he finally walked out, I felt no triumph, only closure. He had come back, not as the man who broke me, but as the man life had broken in return. Later that night, Mili came into my room, holding her phone. "Did he come by?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Yes," she exhaled slowly. "And he's desperate," I said. "The world he built is collapsing." Mili's lips curved slightly. "Good, Mili," I whispered. "Are you happy now?" She paused. "No, but I'm not angry anymore." Over the next few weeks, things spiraled further for Armin and Rini. The government launched an official investigation. Investors demanded refunds. Rini's jewelry store, which Armin had funded, went bankrupt. Neighbors started talking. The same people who once envied their wealth now gossiped about their downfall. They were the new scandal. And everyone loves a scandal. One evening, Rini came to see me again. Her face was pale, her mascara smudged, her voice hoarse. "Annika, I don't know what's happening," she said, near tears. "We're losing everything. He's drinking himself into a mess. I can't handle him anymore. Please, if you know anything, help us." I looked at her, feeling something between pity and disbelief. "You want me to help you?" I asked softly. She nodded desperately. "Please, whatever I did to you, I'm sorry. I really am." I studied her face. The cousin who had once stolen everything I had. But she looked so small now, so defeated. "I don't have anything to give you, Rini," I said. "But I hope this pain teaches you what you taught me. How to Survive Alone. Tears filled her eyes. You hate me that much? No, I said quietly. I just don't feel anything anymore. And for the first time in years, I realized that was true. A few days later, the news broke again. Armin had been arrested for fraud and embezzlement. The photos of him being led away in handcuffs spread like wildfire online. I didn't watch the videos. I didn't need to. But Mili did. She watched them once, then quietly turned off the screen. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just whispered, "It's over." That night, we sat on the balcony, sipping tea under the dim light. The air felt lighter somehow, like a storm had passed. "Mama," she said softly, "do you think he ever really loved us?" I thought about it for a long time. "Maybe he did," I said finally. "But love means nothing if it isn't loyal." She nodded. "Then I guess we're better off without that kind of love." We sat in silence for a while. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Mama, I didn't destroy him. I just showed him the truth he spent 10 years running from." And in that moment, I realized she wasn't just my daughter. She was my justice. After Armin's arrest, I thought the story had finally ended. That karma had done its work. That the ghosts of my past could finally rest. But life rarely ends neatly. There's always one more truth hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to be seen. And that moment came with Rini. It was late afternoon when she showed up again. No makeup, no jewelry, no arrogance. Just a woman, pale, trembling, and exhausted. When I opened the door, she didn't even wait to be invited in. She stepped inside and collapsed onto the chair, clutching her bag like it was all she had left. Her voice cracked as she said, "I can't do this anymore, Annika." I closed the door slowly. "Do what?" "Pretend," she whispered. "Pretend I don't deserve everything that's happening." Her eyes filled with tears. "He's in jail. His company is gone. Our house is being sold. And everyone thinks I was part of it." I stood silently, letting her words hang in the air. She looked at me then, broken, desperate, and very, very human. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said. "Not because I expect forgiveness, but because I can't carry it anymore." I didn't respond right away. For 10 years, I had imagined this moment, the apology, the regret, the collapse. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the quiet after a long war, when even winning doesn't feel good anymore. I sat across from her. "Why Rini?" I asked softly. "Why him? Why me?" She wiped her face. "I don't know. I thought I loved him. I thought he loved me. But love built on betrayal never survives." Her voice trembled. "I thought leaving with him would make me happy. Instead, it's been 10 years of pretending. He never trusted me, Annika. He blamed me for everything, even for his failures. I lived in that house like a stranger." Her hands shook as she spoke. "Every time he looked at our son, I saw it. That guilt, that memory of Mili. You were the one he should have stayed with. And I was the one who ruined it." Tears blurred my vision, but I stayed quiet. Then she said something that made my heart stop. "Annika, Mili came to see me." I froze. "What?" Rini nodded. "She came to my house a few weeks before the arrest. She said she wanted to talk about the past." My breath caught. "What did she say?" "She didn't yell, didn't blame me. She was calm, too calm. She told me she knew everything, that she had read the letters your grandmother wrote before she passed. The ones about the inheritance, about how Armin used your savings to start his business, about how he took your name off everything." I stared at her. "She read those?" "Yes. She said she found them in your old trunk. She wanted me to tell her why we did it. Why we thought we could just walk away." Rini's voice cracked, and I had no answer, because there is no answer good enough. My knees felt weak. I sank into a chair. I hadn't even realized those letters were still in that trunk. I thought I'd thrown them away years ago. But Mili, my clever, restless daughter, had found them. and with them, she had found the missing truth. Not just betrayal, but theft. Armin hadn't just left us emotionally. He had stolen my savings, my inheritance, everything I'd worked for before our marriage. He had built his empire on my name, and Rini had known. Rini was still crying softly. She said something before she left. I'll never forget it. I looked at her, my throat dry. What did she say? She said, "You took my father. He took my mother's peace. Now, I'll take everything you both built from those sins. And when you have nothing left, maybe you'll understand what we lived through." Her voice broke. And she did it, Annika. She really did it. Every connection, every story, every detail. She used them all to bring him down. I didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. My daughter, my sweet, quiet, brilliant Mili, had orchestrated an entire downfall. And she'd done it with precision, with intelligence, with grace. I whispered. She didn't hurt anyone physically, right? Rini shook her head quickly. No, she just exposed the truth. But the truth was enough to destroy us. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. Annika, she's powerful, and she's not done. I think she wants me to suffer too. I met her eyes. Did she threaten you? Rini hesitated. Not directly, but she looked at me and said, "I'll never raise my voice to you. I'll raise your guilt instead." Silence filled the room. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, each second heavy with realization. I finally asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Rini's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I'm scared, not of her, but of what she's becoming." I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend my daughter. But a part of me understood what she meant. Mili had walked through fire, and sometimes, when you come out of fire, you don't come out soft. You come out sharpened. When Rini left that evening, the air in the house felt different, thicker, colder. I went to Mili's room, but she wasn't home yet. Her laptop sat open on the desk, filled with notes, screenshots, documents, financial reports. It was a war map. Every line, every highlight, every note. It all connected to Armin and Rini. And at the center of it all, written in bold black ink, were 3 words, "Justice for Mom." When she came home later, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked softly, "Did you go to see her?" Mili paused at the door, her expression unreadable. "Yes, why?" She looked me in the eyes. Because she needed to know what she'd done, and I needed to see if she regretted it. And she does, Mili said. But that doesn't erase what she stole. Her voice was calm, but her eyes shimmered with something deep, something beyond revenge. She said you were stronger than she ever was. Mili added, "She's right." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything. The betrayal, the years of silence, the revenge that had come full circle. It wasn't about money or reputation anymore. It was about pain being passed down. From me to Mili. From betrayal to justice. From love to lessons. And I realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. I had spent my life surviving my past, but my daughter had chosen to rewrite it. When you finally get what you wanted, when justice is done, and the ones who hurt you have fallen, you expect to feel peace. But peace doesn't always come. Sometimes, it's just quiet, too quiet, and in that quiet, guilt begins to whisper. After Rini's visit, Mili started changing, not outwardly. She still laughed, helped me at the shop, teased me about my obsession with old movies. But I could see it in her eyes. The fire that had once burned so brightly was dimming. One night, I found her sitting on the balcony, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the city lights below. She didn't notice me at first. I sat beside her quietly. "Couldn't sleep?" She shook her head. "Do you ever think about them?" "Who?" "Dad and her." I hesitated. "Sometimes. Not often." She turned to me. "Do you ever feel bad for them?" Her question took me off guard. bad for them after everything they did? She shrugged. I don't know. It's strange. I thought I'd feel satisfied. But now that it's done, I just feel empty. Her words echoed in my chest. I touched her hand gently. That's because revenge doesn't fill the space pain leaves behind. It just clears it. She looked at me, her eyes glassy. I wanted him to understand how much he broke you, how much you gave up just to raise me. I thought if I made him fall, it would heal something inside me. But it didn't. Her voice trembled slightly. It just made me realize how broken he already was. I could see it then. She had seen too much. The arrest, the headlines, the shame. She had looked into the eyes of the man who had once been her father and seen a shell, and in that moment, she wasn't the avenger anymore. She was just a daughter who finally understood her father's weakness. Days passed. The story in the news began to fade. People moved on to new scandals, but inside our home, the silence lingered. One morning, while I was sorting fabrics, Mili came into the shop, holding her phone. Mama, she said softly, you should see this. It was a photo of Rini, standing outside a hospital. The caption read, Rini Chaudhary admitted after panic attack, amid husband's trial. I stared at it, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. She's not doing well, Mili said quietly. Her son dropped out of school. Their house was seized. She's living with her brother now. I looked at her. And how does that make you feel? She swallowed hard. Guilty. I didn't mean to ruin her whole life. I sighed. You didn't ruin it, Mili. You revealed the truth. What happened next was their doing. She nodded slowly, but her voice cracked. It doesn't feel that simple anymore. That evening, she went to her room early. I didn't bother her. I could hear the faint sound of typing, the occasional sniffle, the sound of her pacing. The next morning, she showed me an email draft. Mama, I wrote something, she said. It was a message to Rini, a long, heartfelt one. In it, she apologized. Not for exposing the truth, but for the pain it caused. She wrote, You hurt my mother, but you also hurt yourself. Maybe we both deserve peace now. I don't hate you anymore. I just hope you learn from what you lost. She didn't send it right away. She asked me first, should I? I read the message again and said, If you're ready to forgive, do it for yourself, not for her. Mili nodded, tears in her eyes. I think I'm ready, and she pressed send. A week later, Rini replied. The email was short, shaky, and honest. Mili, thank you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but your words gave me something I thought I'd never have again. Dignity. I hope one day your mother can forgive me too. When Mili read it, she cried for the first time since all this began. Not from anger, not from relief, but from release. It was as if she'd been holding her breath for 10 years. And finally exhaled. The next day, we visited the lake where we used to go when she was little. The air was still, the water calm. She threw a small pebble into the lake and said, That's it. It's over now. I smiled softly. Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. I took everything from them. Not out of hate, but out of pain. But if I keep holding on to that, I'll become them. And I don't want to be that kind of person. I reached over and brushed her hair back gently. You already aren't. She smiled faintly, tears shimmering. Maybe karma needed my help to start, but forgiveness. That's mine to finish. That night, as I watched her sleep, I realized something profound. She had inherited my scars, but she'd also rewritten my ending. Where I once stayed silent, she spoke. Where I once suffered, she acted. And where I once carried bitterness, she found forgiveness. It wasn't revenge that healed us. It was understanding. And maybe that's what karma really means. Not punishment, but realization. A few days later, we received a letter. It was from Armin, written from prison. It said, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But if there's any kindness left in your heart, tell Mili I'm proud of her. She's strong, stronger than I ever was. Tell her I see now what I lost. Not money, not comfort, but a family that truly loved me. I'll live the rest of my life with that regret." Mili read it silently. Then she folded it neatly and said, "He finally learned his lesson." I watched her walk away, tall, calm and free. For years I thought I'd lost everything when Arman left me. But now I understood. I hadn't lost a husband. I'd gained a daughter who became my justice, my voice, and my peace. When the dust settles and all the noise fades, you're left with the truth, not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers, the kind that sits quietly beside you at night and asks, "Was it worth it?" Months had passed since the trial. Life was starting to look normal again. If there's such a thing as normal. After years of betrayal, pain, and revelation, the shop was running better than ever. Mili had been offered a job at a large marketing firm, and for the first time, I saw genuine excitement in her eyes about her future. Not about payback, not about proving anyone wrong, but about building something new. I thought the chapter was closed, but fate, as always, had one more page waiting. One afternoon, I came home to find Mili sitting at the kitchen table, a letter clutched in her hand. She didn't look up right away. I asked gently, "What's that?" "It's from him," she said quietly. "Dad!" I froze for a second. He wrote again. She nodded. This time he asked to see us. I didn't know what to say. The idea of facing him, after all these years, made my stomach twist. But then she said softly, "Mama, I think I want to go." We didn't rush the decision. For a week we said nothing about it. We just lived, cooking, working, watching the rain fall through the window. But the thought lingered like a quiet heartbeat. Neither of us could ignore. Finally, one morning, she came to me with resolve in her eyes. "Mama, I've already forgiven him in my heart. I just want to tell him to his face and move on completely." Her voice was calm, steady. It wasn't anger that drove her anymore. It was closure. So we went. The prison was cold, sterile, echoing with metallic clanks and footsteps that sounded too loud for comfort. As we walked through the security checks, I felt like every step backward, in time. Back to the woman who'd once begged a man not to leave, not to destroy their family. But I wasn't that woman anymore. When we finally reached the visitor's room, I saw him sitting behind the glass wall, Armin. His once proud posture was gone. His hair was streaked with grey, his face thinner, his eyes heavy with time and regret. He looked up, and when he saw us, his lips trembled slightly. Mili sat down first. I stayed beside her, my hand resting on her shoulder. He picked up the receiver, and his voice cracked through the static. "Mili, you came." She nodded. "I did." There was a pause, so much unspoken between them. He tried to smile, but it was broken. "You look grown. You look like your mother." She stared at him steadily. "I am my mother's daughter." For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Mili said softly, "Why did you do it?" Arman looked down, his fingers trembling. I wish I had an answer that made sense. I thought I was chasing happiness. I thought love was something new, something exciting. But it was just selfishness. Blind, stupid selfishness. He swallowed hard. Every night in here, I replay that day. When I walked out on you two, I see Mili's face. I see yours. And I realize I didn't just betray you. I betrayed myself. Mili blinked back tears, but didn't look away. "I hated you for years," she admitted. "I wanted to make you suffer. And I did." Armin nodded slowly. "I know, and I deserved it." Then she said the words that silenced everything. Even the air. "I don't hate you anymore." His eyes widened, glistening. You don't?" "No," she said. "I realized you were already punishing yourself more than I ever could. You lost everything, and not because of what we did to you, but because of what you chose." Her voice softened. "I just came here to tell you that I forgive you. Not for you to feel better, but for me to finally let go. He leaned forward, tears falling freely now. Mili, I don't deserve that, but thank you. Then he turned to me. Annika, it had been over a decade since he last said my name like that. Gently, like a confession, I met his gaze, steady but calm. You broke me once, Armin, but somehow, breaking me made me stronger. He nodded slowly, eyes heavy with remorse. I can see that. You've become everything I should have cherished. I sighed. We didn't come here for you to apologize. We came to close this chapter, to walk away with peace. He whispered, I understand. When we stood to leave, he said one last thing. Mili, live a good life. Don't let your father's sins weigh on your heart. Be happy for both of us. Mili smiled faintly. I already am. And with that, she placed her hand on the glass. Just for a second. A silent goodbye to a man she once called Dad. He pressed his palm against hers, tears streaming down his face. Then she turned and walked away. I followed her. But before leaving, I looked back one last time. Armin was still sitting there, shoulders trembling, head bowed, a man haunted by his own choices. But for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt free. Outside, the sunlight was warm, the air fresh, almost like a new beginning. Mili looked at me and said, It's over now, isn't it? I smiled softly. Yes, love, it's over. We walked out of those gates hand in hand, not as the abandoned and the betrayed, but as survivors who had turned their pain into peace. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of the past behind me, only the gentle pull of tomorrow ahead. The sun rose gently over the city, golden light spilling into our home in a way that felt like a promise. For years, I had lived under the shadow of betrayal, the absence of love, the weight of abandonment, the quiet ache of loss. But that shadow had finally lifted, and it was Mili who carried the torch that lit our way. The boutique had grown, not just in customers, but in meaning, threads of tomorrow. The new sign Mili designed was more than a name. It was a statement that we had stitched our past into something beautiful, something strong. She had taken everything I'd taught her, patience, resilience, attention to detail, and combined it with her own creativity. The shop buzzed with life, laughter, and pride. One morning, as we arranged mannequins in the window, Mili looked at me and said softly, Mama, do you remember when we thought we had nothing left? I nodded. How could I forget? She smiled. We did have something, each other, and we turned it into everything else. I reached out and held her hand, marveling at the strength she had grown into. You were always stronger than you knew, love. No, she said, shaking her head. We were always equal. You taught me how to survive. I just learned how to thrive. Weeks passed. Life returned to a rhythm. No news of Armin or Rini reached us. And that was how we wanted it. No reminders. No ghosts. Just peace. One evening we sat by the balcony with cups of tea. The sky was a canvas of orange and pink. And for the first time in years, we felt the weight of the past release its grip. Mama, Mili said quietly, I thought revenge would feel good, but it didn't. It felt heavy until I realized forgiveness and understanding was what made us free. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. That's the greatest lesson life can teach us. Strength isn't in punishment. It's in knowing what you can control and letting go of what you can't. She smiled faintly. And maybe karma just needed a little push. I laughed softly. Yes, a little push from a clever daughter. We spent that night talking about the future, traveling, expanding the boutique, maybe even opening a small design school for young women in the city, teaching them to create, to stand strong, to build their own paths, no matter what the past had taken from them. And as I watched Mili sketch ideas on her notepad, a vision of life fully lived, I realized something remarkable. I had survived the betrayal of the man I once loved. I had survived the pain of being abandoned. I had survived the years of loneliness, struggle, and heartbreak. But it wasn't just survival anymore. It was life reclaimed. Mili had not only made the ones who hurt us pay. She had done so without hatred, without cruelty, without losing herself. She had taken our pain and transformed it into purpose. And in doing so, she had shown me what it truly meant to heal. That night, we stepped onto the balcony together, looking at the city lights twinkling below. "Mama," she said softly, "we're free now, aren't we?" "Yes, love," I replied, pulling her close. Free to live, to love, to laugh, to be happy. And in that moment, I knew we had chosen peace. The kind that only comes when you face the past, embrace the lessons, and walk forward without fear. For 10 years we had waited. For 10 years we had carried scars. But now in each other's arms we were whole. And that, more than revenge, more than justice, more than anything else, was enough. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace out.